So what happens when the person who's supposed to be in charge just isn't? Today we're going to break down this really fascinating piece of satire called The Absent Leader. It's a story, yes, but it digs into this bizarre dance of modern power. What happens when a leader is less of a person and more of, well, a symbol? And this quote right here, it's from our main character, Liya, and it just hits the nail on the head. It sets up the whole mystery. See, she's a communications analyst. She gets called up to the big leagues, the very heart of power. But the second she walks in, she gets this feeling, that something is just deeply off. All right, so let's follow Liya as she steps into the Citadel for the first time. This part is all about that initial shock, that moment she realizes she's walked into a totally bizarre and, frankly, unsettling new world. So you'd expect this bustling hub of activity, right? Nope. What Liya finds is quiet hallways and these ridiculously vague offices with names like the Unit for the Preservation of Presidential Quiet. I mean, what even is that? It feels like the entire place is set up to distract you, not to get anything done. And that's when it hits her. The job here isn't about governing. It's about performing. And this is where things get really jarring. The president makes this super brief, 3-minute appearance. Afterwards, Liya's told, okay, describe him as firm, articulate, and vigorous. But what she saw was a guy who seemed lost. He was asking his staff really simple things like, where are we going now? This is her first real peek behind the curtain, and she sees this massive gap between the official story and, well, reality. And that leads her to figure out the big, unspoken rule of the whole place. It's more than just a secret. The story has this great term for it, a consensus hallucination. Basically, everyone has to pretend the leader is fully present. They have to, because if they don't, the whole system collapses. And, their own careers go down with it. So, who's pulling the strings here? Who's in charge of keeping up this whole charade? Well, in this next part, Liya gets an invitation to meet the architects of the whole performance. She goes into this meeting thinking, okay, they want my strategic input. But that's not it at all. The real reason she's there is way more blunt. It's about getting her in line. It's about making sure she uses their approved vocabulary no matter what her own eyes told her. And this is when she meets the inner sanctum. They're called the circle. And just look at these roles. Each one has this incredibly specific and kind of chilling job. You've got the strategist, the architect of illusion, the gatekeeper who's the enforcer of secrecy, even the doctor, the certifier of fitness. They're not a cabinet, they're more like a council of guardians, a human firewall built around the president's absence. And their whole game is built on one core idea. They aren't trying to solve the actual problem. In fact, they don't even think it is a problem. To them, the only thing that matters is public perception. And they are 100% convinced that perception is something you can totally control and manage. So how do they keep everyone quiet? With this terrifyingly perfect circular logic. Look at this. You raise a concern, right? A totally valid one. But they tell you that your concern will cause the narrative to collapse, which means the opposition wins, which means the republic ends. And therefore, your concern isn't a concern. It's treason. Bam. Just like that, saying what you see becomes an act of betrayal. And this is the big, chilling takeaway from her meeting with the circle. The president isn't a man anymore. He's a message. The actual person has been totally hollowed out, replaced by this brand, this carefully crafted narrative. And as the pollster points out, it's a message that tests well as long as no one looks too closely. Okay, so how do they actually do it? How do they build and protect this message 24/7? Well, the story gets into the incredible tech and the rituals they use to keep total control. Their main tool is something the story calls the screen. And no, we're not just talking about your TV or your phone. Think bigger. The screen is the entire digital world. Every social media feed, every news site, every data point, all humming along in perfect sync. It's this massive digital hallucination that isn't meant to show you reality. It's meant to be your reality. And here's a look at the control panel, so to speak. This is their narrative correction pipeline. I mean, just listen to these terms. Shadow reply, corrective trend, friendly stitch. It sounds like something straight out of a dystopian movie. If a piece of information pops up that they don't like, one that threatens their story, they activate this pipeline to bury it, to discredit it, or to just overwhelm it with their own stuff. It's a wild, detailed look at how information can be controlled. It's not all digital, though. They also have these big public events, like a fancy gala. Internally, they call it the ceremony, but they also call it the ritual. And that name fits because its whole purpose is almost religious. It's designed to make everyone believe again, to reconsecrate the illusion with a big dose of pomp and circumstance. And at this ceremony, the difference between the show and the reality is just wow. The president gets up there and gives this rambling, almost nonsensical speech. You can just imagine the aides backstage just wincing. But here's the crazy part. It doesn't matter. The crowd just applauds on cue. Maybe it's habit, or maybe it's because they're all terrified of what happens if the applause stops.
This line from the gatekeeper just says it all, doesn't it? Reality is a vulnerability. The screen is our firewall. In this world, the truth isn't just a pain to deal with. It's seen as an actual security threat. The whole machine, the screen, is a firewall designed to protect their fragile system from the danger of what's actually happening.
So that brings us to the final act. What happens when someone finally breaks the code of silence? What happens when someone steps out of the hallucination and just says what's true? Well, Liya is about to find out, the hard way. And the consequences, they're not loud or dramatic. They're quiet, fast, and total. Liya goes on TV and says a simple, true thing. A small group of staffers is effectively running the country. And within 48 hours, her career is just gone. Her badge stops working, her calls aren't returned. It turns out the machine that protects the illusion is also incredibly good at erasing anyone who threatens it. But getting pushed out gives her this moment of perfect clarity. She finally gets it. The Citadel, this whole massive power structure, it never really needed a leader. All it needed was a symbol, a placeholder, an empty vessel they could pour any story they wanted into. So where's the real power then? It's not in the Oval Office. It's in the machinery built around the office. It's the circle, the screen, the ceremony. The power is the illusion itself, and the silent agreement everyone makes to protect that illusion, no matter what. And here it is, maybe the most chilling idea in the whole story. The empty center, the leader's absence. It's not a bug. It's a feature. It's not a mistake they have to cover up. It's the design. It's what allows the real system, the circle, the bureaucracy, to run things with absolute freedom. But the story does leave us with a warning. You can build the most amazing, convincing illusion in the world, but it's still not leadership. And keeping a system like this going takes a huge amount of energy. Eventually, the story seems to say, a machine like this is going to collapse under its own weight. Which brings us to the final, haunting question the story leaves you with. It's all about how fragile our perception of power really is. Because once you see the empty throne, can you ever really unsee it? Once you know it's a performance, can you ever go back to just believing the story?